South Africa has been hit by its worst drought in more than 30 years. The El Niño weather pattern has hit maize farmers hard and forced the country to import a staple food it normally exports. However, good rains in the early part of this year are helping turn things around.
This year, 2016-17, it was a better year because climate, it was favorable to us as farmers. We managed to have good rain. I'm very happy with this year's harvest because my yield, it was much better than the previous 2 years combined. As a farmer, we always believe that the future is very bright, and I'm surely thinking that our future as the farmers is very bright.
But it's not going to be all smooth sailing for the farmers. Bumper crops in other southern African nations have dropped the price of maize exports from $370 a tonne in January last year down to $130 a tonne recently, so they'll need to keep up the yields to stay profitable.
Over the last 2 years, maize farmers across southern Africa have struggled with their yields. But now, as this year's season draws to a close, things are looking up, which could have added benefits downstream.
While South Africa's annual maize yields have been steadily declining over the past 5 years, it's expected that this year's harvest will be the biggest in nearly 4 decades.
A lot of things are going to change. When we compare it to what it was during the drought, we saw that it affected jobs, it affected the economy as a whole. We can expect lower food prices, which will help, obviously, within the lower income groups of the South African economy. We can also expect lower feed prices that will also help within the livestock industry. So there's quite a lot of changes that we can expect to see, and some that we've already seen so far.
The maize industry forms a crucial part of the South African agricultural landscape. And while lower export prices may cause a few niggles in the short term, business across the value chain, from the field to the mill, is up, which is a good thing, not just for the farmers. Jason Boswell, TRT World, Wesselbron.
Well, for more on this, Hamlet Hlomendlini joins me from East London, South Africa. He is Chief Economist at Agri AS. Hamlet, thanks for joining us on the show. The South African economy has been severely battered of late. It's currently in its second recession in the space of 10 years. Just how important is this for the economy?
Certainly, that is very, very important. Thank you for having me on the show. I appreciate it. The South African economy, as you said, has been facing some challenges in recent months. And that is due to a number of things that are taking place in South Africa at the moment, including the downgradings that have taken place also. But if we're looking at sector specifically for the agricultural sector, it has been a backbone of the economy. It's one of the 2 sectors that has performed very well in the previous quarter, taking the economy in a much better position than it would have been had it not been the agricultural sector.
Is this enough to wrest the country out of the doldrum that it's currently in?
Certainly not. A lot more will need to be done. We cannot only rely on one sector or 2 sectors to actually take the economy out of the position where it is at the moment. We need the manufacturing sector to actually be performing very well. But we're quite pleased with the performance of the agriculture sector, given the fact that the agriculture sector in South Africa has faced a number of challenges, including the most drought that we have seen in 10 years in South Africa. It was the most severe drought that we've ever seen in 10 years in South Africa. And also there are things that have also faced the sector, including the armyworms. But the sector is actually up on a uphill at the moment. It's doing very well.
So we're expecting a bumper harvest in maize. Are we likely to see growth in other agricultural products as well?
If we're looking, for instance, at the horticulture, for instance, you would notice that it has done well even during the drought. So on that side, the horticulture, like the fruit industry, for instance, which is more like export-oriented, exporting to Europe, for instance, it has been doing very well even during drought. But now with the maize crop coming in, hitting a record high of more than 15 million tons, we're likely to see a positive outlook in the agricultural sector in South Africa. And that is not good only for the agricultural sector, but also for the economy as a whole, because the agricultural sector is actually the main bone of the economy in South Africa and in Africa at large. For instance, in terms of employment, in South Africa, the agricultural force employs about 5% of the workforce in South Africa, which is something substantial. So it speaks volume about the importance of the sector, and that percentage is actually higher than the mining sector and almost in par with the transport sector.
Now, as you pointed to earlier, drought hasn't been the only challenge facing farming in South Africa. The issue of land has come up as a major issue in terms of political policy. And how will this affect agriculture in the coming years, especially when one considers the 2019 elections?
That actually is the main talk in the country at the moment. The politicians are using that, to lure voters to vote for them. But we do have the constitution in South Africa that protects, the South African economy. And given the fact that agriculture plays a critical role, in that, land needs to be protected. So the talks of land or expropriation of land without compensation, it's something that is being thrown out there at the moment. And if it were to come through, it would have dire consequences on the sector, because you would know that in the agricultural sector in South Africa, farmers rely, for instance, on the financial institutions, for the cash flow to be able to get loans, and they use the land as a collateral. If therefore land would be expropriated without compensation, that therefore means the value of land.
Hamlet, I'm going to have to cut you off there. Apologies, we've run short of time. That was Economist for Agri SA, Hamlet Hlomendlini, speaking to us from East London in South Africa.